You were telling some stories earlier about having to direct these children on set while their parents were there, and you have the kid holding a porno magazine while his mom is 10 feet away.
There were two moments that were really difficult. One was there were the two children who basically, supposedly were watching their parents being murdered. They didn't really give a shit if their parents were murdered. They really didn't give a shit. And I'm trying to tell them their parents are being murdered. And they don't care. They just don't care. And that's the most amazing thing that's imaginable. And I bring them in the room and I show their two murdered parents. And they just look and say, who the fuck cares? You know, it gets really difficult at some point. You know, because I'm making essentially a low-budget movie that is so fucking over-budget you can't even imagine. And that becomes a really big deal, especially to my producers. And my second producer just died, and had a big celebration where Donovan sang. It was his best friend. And essentially, we walked out, and there was a gift celebration when we walked out. And you know what the gift was? It was his ashes in a cocaine bottle. And I've been trying to, every show I've been on in the last year, I keep asking people, should I throw it away or should I keep it? I don't understand what to do with it.
Snort it.
No. If there was cocaine in it, I would snort it. We made a deal to make a movie for $450,000. Okay, about this. And then it turned out that, because I was so ambitious, that I contacted a cinematographer in Europe and said, you're my favorite cinematographer. Would you dare come over and shoot this movie for me? And he said to me, let me read the script. And so instead of letting him read the script, I took a plane over to Vienna where he was shooting, and I brought him the entire script. And I let him look at every scene of the movie. And he said to me, this looks fabulous. I will do this. I will do this. And you know, it was the most wonderful moment of my entire life, if you really want to know. But the fact of the matter is, by the time we got to about the 19th week of the shoot, and the temperature in New Jersey was about 120 below zero, he was no longer interested in working on the movie. He just really didn't want to work on the movie. But it turned out that a close friend of mine is somebody he had mentored. And so he went and he said, I'll finish the movie for him. And then it turned out that we got on the set the first day, and now the crew, which basically had adored this guy, because he was such a genius at what he did. He worked with Alain Resnais, he worked with every great foreign director in the world. And my crew basically began to be totally committed to him. And then they came to me that night and said, he's changing your lighting. And I said, what do you mean he's changing my lighting? He said, he's changing your lighting. He wants to do his own thing. And then I had to go confront him and do that, which was not the easiest thing in the world. I spent 10 years writing this fucking script, if you really want to know. I spent 10 years on this script to make it right and make it perfect. And then basically when the film came out, the reaction was so offensive to the film. I mean, people didn't think it was a comedy. People didn't think that there was anything funny about this. They thought that I was being insulting to everybody. And you know, if it wasn't for John Waters 4 years ago, 4 years later, saying that, you know, that don't you understand what this is about? It's a joke. It's a joke. It's a black comedy. And you know, and even then it didn't really make sense to a lot of people. And John saved my life in that sense. So that's...
You had mentioned it, but why was the scene with the shaky knife, cut? Because it seemed like a really, seeing him sitting there with that shaky knife, that looked really cool.
I actually can't hear anything.
Oh, who decided to make the cuts that excised the parts that were in that little reel?
The people who decided to make the cuts were basically the producers who thought that the movie was getting really slow and boring and had no, you know, that it was pointless. This was a time in which Halloween had come out. The only reason I got the movie to fucking get made was because Halloween was made. And I had come up with another holiday. That's all they fucking cared about. You know, it's holiday. That's all they fucking cared about. They wanted another holiday movie. Except they didn't know what was in my head, which was nothing like what was in John Carpenter's head. And that, you know, and that's just, that, you know, that, I can't help that. There's nothing I can, there's really nothing I can do about it. You know, I mean, I had one idea, he had another idea. He made $1 billion, I made shit. and you know, and the thing about Brandon's performance is, what you can see in the DVD is that he got it from the instant. He got it from the first moment of what was going on, and he knew how to do it. And I think part of that is, Brandon is a guy who came from Broadway. He played with Phil Silvers in an early, big-time musical comedy. And so basically, he knew how to do the shtick. He always knew how to do the shtick. And so basically, it really, for him, it was no work for him. He didn't have to think about it. He just did shtick. That's what he did. And Brandon's the father of Fiona Apple.
I didn't mention that earlier.
and his other daughter, who actually is much more talented, is his other daughter, who actually is a nightclub singer, is fantastic beyond your wildest imagination. And you know, and he runs this little kind of estate in Venice, and he basically, you know, he keeps them all together. And it's really remarkable. It's really a remarkable thing. You know, because basically he and I were not the best of friends. And there's all these stories that keep coming out about. And if you listen to John, there's a moment in which Brandon, in the middle of the movie, decides to drop his pants in the middle of a shot. And John Waters says to me, "How dare he? Do you know how much money that cost you? Do you actually know how much money that actually cost you?" He has no nerve to do that. So, I mean, you know, it's just the nature of this.
Wait, there's a scene where his pants come off in the movie?
No, he actually comes out of a room and he drops his pants to try to make a joke out of a scene. He makes a joke out of a scene. He actually makes a joke out of a scene. And then John says, in the DVD, he says, "How fucking dare he do something like that? He cost you a lot of money."
I thought sex sells.
Well, by the way, if you saw Brandon, there's no sex involved.